And she's way too polite to eat where we can hear her. So thank you, Chris.
The link that you sent didn't work.
I just had that discussion with Agnes.
Oh,
For the second time in 3 months, there seems to be a shelf life in Webinar Jam for the length of the software supporting an event. When I came online at 11:30 today and opened up my Webinar Jam and went to the webinar, it took me to last week's webinar.
yeah, that's what took me to.
And that put up a flag for me, and I went back, canceled it, went back to the Webinar Jam software, copied the show, uh, resent it, and here we are. The second time the cloned webinar came and set me up for a new one on today's date. This did happen once back in, I think, the first week of February. We had the same similar issue. I don't know how that works, and this time I think because it has happened twice in just about 2 months, I'll contact the Webinar Jam people because I have the other copy of the other event still, and
Yeah.
to see if they can explain. It may well be that you cannot do more than 4 in a cycle before you have to restart the whole thing.
I didn't
Don't
know.
know.
I didn't know if I was gonna make it back. I had to take buttons to the vet, and it's like 25 miles away. So,
Wow. And how is the dog doing? This is the second time, isn't it?
well, they wanted to do a full blood panel on her, so I just had to take her over there and get the blood. So I should know more tomorrow. But she seems much better.
Well, that's better than not feeling any better.
Yeah.
She just off her food or just not her usual self?
Diabetes.
Okay, yeah. It's unfortunate that dogs suffer from human ailments, but it's just something in their nature. They catch human things.
I had never heard of it before until one of our cats a few years ago got it. So not only dogs but cats too.
Yeah, no, I think it's the domestication thing, the close proximity to people. Um, it's actually I have a pharmacist friend of mine, and he says there's quite a bit of an argument for if a pet in your household comes up with cancer or diabetes or something like that, that if there's nobody in the house that has had the illness, that everybody should get checked because about 2/3 of the time there is a human around the pet that has the illness.
Huh.
So it can be an early warning because animals are so much smaller. They tend to show signs well before their human companion does, if that's the issue. And it's certainly not 100%, and there's not a lot of scientific data, but I've known Alan for a decade, and I know he wouldn't share it in a public forum if he didn't in his heart believe there was some truth to it.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things, you know, you got to take it on faith, but it can be that little warning sign people need to be a head step. And it's not always somebody in the immediate family, but it's usually somebody around the pet, unless it's just that random occasion that it's elderly and it's time. You know, we all never know how we're going to go. So I actually had that experience in my local community. We had a young girl, we don't know how it happened yet, but 39 years old, found dead in her home yesterday. She worked at the Atlas restaurant here locally, and a bunch of people that I used to work with still know her, and it was quite a bit of a shock at 39 years old. But I guess none of us ever know how long we have or when we'll be called to leave.
What's that? No one knows the day and time. I've heard that before.
Yeah. Phyllis says she won't even look at that part of her own chart because there's ways you can tell within reason when you'll go, and it's not good if you know for yourself or people close to you.
I had a psychic tell me the first time, and I've gone to them on and off for years because they're cheaper than a therapist, you know.
And maybe as good or better.
Anyway, I don't know, she looked at me and she said, well, you should get this taken care of because you've got at least 14 years left. That's the first time any kind of stuff like that's come out of somebody's mouth. But you know what? It preys on your mind too. All of a sudden, that was 2 years ago. So do I only have 12 years left?
Well, and that is the danger of putting your faith in those sort of things, because you don't know if they are good at, or accurate, or if they have all the information, um, or if that's exactly what they're talking about. If she didn't say you're going to pass in 14 years, but it may just mean there's something really special going to happen in your life in 14 years that she saw, and that's only the midpoint, and you've actually got 30.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
Although I did hear from an elderly man, I used to have a booth where I promoted my natural health food products in the Comox Mall. And every week for like 6 months, this nice elderly guy would stop and be polite. And he would say something about, his wife's week, and never talked about himself a lot. But after about 2 months, I asked him, if he wasn't interested in any of my health products, why he always stopped to talk to me. He says, just social, like to meet people, like to talk to people. And I said, well, would you be interested in, adding a third or a half to the life you have left, by eating better and, improving your health? And he says, honestly, I'm 89 years old. I don't want to live another 10 years, young man.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot in my business, that's for sure, or my old business.
So, it was a lesson for me, because what it showed me was, even though I was in an area where the general age was 75 years old, and these are the sort of people that can get the fastest benefit from the products I represent, because they're seriously depleted for nutritional stuff that their body needs to heal and preserve themselves. Um, Half of my audience had no interest in all of what I was promoting, because to them it was actually against their better interest to live longer and be healthier, because their friends, even the ones that had lived longer, weren't healthier, so it was completely foreign to their experience. I could have been saying that they were going to become the president or the prime minister or a king, and it would have been just as likely as they were going to end up healthy in their old age, because they'd had 30, 40, 50 years of aging. They were in their 60s, 70s, 80s year old, and you get what you think about. So wow, I actually, about 6 months after that, stopped hanging out in that mall, because I looked at the math at the end of the year after spending a whole calendar year there, and the sales had consistently, I'd sold 2 products a week for almost a year on average, but it had never increased. It hadn't really decreased. One week it was 3, and the next week it was 2, and then back up down to 2, and then 2, and then 4, and then 1 and 1, and sort of thing. But it was 2 sales every day I was in the mall. I was there once a week, but it was never going to grow, because only a certain percentage of the population there wanted to be healthy and could afford it. And you need to have both the interest and the ability to pay for your product, or you don't have anything to sell. I had a sales trainer when I was in the insurance business, and he likened it to, if you don't know your market, if you don't know your ideal client, you could end up being that young person that takes basketballs to the old folks' home, and they're on sale and they're a great deal, but the people in the old folks' home, first of all, they can't play basketball. Even if they wanted to play basketball, if you're already in an old folks' home, you're probably not going to spend more than maybe 5 minutes throwing the ball and give up. You're going to be tired, you're going to be stiff, you're going to be sore. So it really is knowing your audience and knowing that they have a need for what you're putting in front of them. Um, it's just part of the learning curve. I think that I've had 2 different people in the last year uh, basically go through what I'm offering to help me narrow down what I have to give and who it's good for, because until you clearly see that, it is really hard to focus on what you're offering the people around you. It's that age-old saying, I've been hearing it now for over 3 years: if you're selling everything to everybody, you're selling nothing to nobody, because you aren't going to hit the nerve or have all the information for your ideal client if you're trying to fill the boots of, in my case, if I'm talking about heart recovery, diabetes, cancer, pretty soon it gets pretty confusing, and there's so many things going on that nobody knows what I'm talking about or what it's good for. So as soon as I narrowed down to focus just on heart health, I started to get more people with those issues responding, because I was consistently talking about what they could relate to. when in the beginning I think I went through 8 different disease states in 8 weeks, and I made 2 posts about each one of them. I got maybe 1 response a week. When I did one every week for a month on the same subject, I got like 3 comments back. It just seemed to make a real difference once I narrowed it down and got the focus going. So I didn't have a guest speaker today, but I wanted to talk about a book that I've gone back to. I read this about 10 years ago, and I found, cleaning up about 3 weeks ago, I found a DVD set from this same teacher. The gentleman's name is Dr. Robert Anthony, and the book is The Ultimate Secrets of Total Self-Confidence.
Okay.
He also has a CD set or a DVD set that is called Beyond Positive Thinking. That was released in early 2003, and in 2005 he came out with something called The Power of Deliberate Creation. So, knowing that I had to cover something for the group today, I pulled out the book from my reading pile in the bedroom, brought it in the office today, and I didn't start where I was reading. I just flipped it open to a page. And funny enough, the page comes back to what I spent the whole weekend covering. I'm doing an intake to a new training platform, and part of the process is to go through and to figure out your dream life and what you have to offer who. So the topic I came up with when I flipped through the book on page 55, where I ended up, is taking responsibility. If you have the right and the option to choose anything you want to do, anything at all, no one else can choose for you. Your creator has given you free will to do anything you wish within the limits of your intellect and physical capacity. You are allowed to make mistakes, fail, lie, cheat, cry, be lazy, angry, selfish, loyal, aggressive, rejected, hurt, overindulge in food, drink, or sex, change your mind, do anything else you want. The divine gift of the individual choice is always yours. It's like that, they talk about in the Bible, we all have a choice. But free will certainly does not imply you will make the right choice all the time. Your choice is only as right as your present level of awareness. So as we grow as people, as we learn from more people, gather more life experiences, we become more aware of our surroundings. And as we become more aware of our surroundings, we become better able to make the right choice. You have learned that, and I have. When you make any decision, it is based on the level of awareness which is at a fixed point at that moment. You can do one thing and only one thing based on your current awareness. Thus, you are always doing the best you can under the present circumstance. You must give yourself the right to make mistakes, because it is through mistakes that your awareness is expanding. Doing anything you want helps to release the emotional resistance and guilt which arise from repression and the unconscious programming of your subconscious mind. You will never be free until you learn to be true to yourself and accept full responsibility for your own life and the fulfillment of your needs. Wow. Even though I randomly came to this section of the book, it is what I've been wrestling with all weekend. I was doing my taxes. I looked at what I spent last year, and for the second year in a row, what I spent exceeded what I made. So I decided I was going to take some responsibility, and in the areas where I have choice, I'm going to spend half as much as I did last year. I'm not going to throw everything out and stop doing everything, but I am going to make the choice to do 2 things: increase my income as well as decrease my expenses, because when I was a financial advisor, that worked for my clients, so I'm pretty sure it's going to work for me. But in doing so, you must also fully accept for every thought, word, deed, and decision, inevitably, you will have to pay the price for each. To use an old adage, If you want to dance, you must be prepared to pay the fiddler. And as usual, I'd heard half of that old wives' tale or old adage. But as things pass through time, because this man's 70 or 80 years old now, some things get abbreviated. But I think it makes much more sense when you hear the whole thing. If you want to dance, you must be prepared to pay the fiddler. I've heard it said you need to pay the fiddler or the piper, but I hadn't heard the first half of that. You will learn and grow according to the nature and consequences of your actions. Keep in mind that nothing you do is right or wrong, good or bad. It is only wise or unwise. As hopefully you progress from unwise to wise action, the importance of this terminology will become increasingly evident. Before you do anything, ask yourself the following questions. Is this a wise or unwise act? Will it contribute to my basic needs? Will it harm me or somebody else? Is it in harmony with laws of the universe as I understand them? What is the total price I must pay? And am I willing and able to pay this price and accept the consequences? Big question, isn't it?
Very.
One of the phrases that I heard some time ago was, there's no such thing as a bad decision. And bad meant the best available data. So it wasn't like what we would normally say a bad decision. It was a decision based on the best available data. And often in hindsight, it looks like a bad decision because we now have more data available. But at the time, it was the best decision that we could make.
So,
sort of.
Okay.
I was just going to say, in terms of life, like you sometimes have to keep that in mind. That hindsight is great, but it's based on today's knowledge base or information.
Well, I know personally for me, one of the issues is I used to beat myself up about making the bad decision when I found out the more information. But as you said, and as they say in the book here, you can only do the best you have with what you know at the time. In his book, Beyond Positive Thinking, he says that it's not about whether it's a good thought or a bad thought. It is it correct? Good and bad are emotional decisions we make, but there is no, things don't have a charge until we as human beings put a charge to it. The example he liked to use is the word manipulation. Now, if I come out and say that I was manipulated, you would think that that was a horrible thing and I probably had a negative experience. But if I happen to be talking about going to the chiropractor to have be manipulated, that could be a really, really positive thing. So the word didn't have a charge, good or bad, but we as human beings make a decision and attach a charge to it, and then forever when we hear the word, it either has a negative or a positive connotation to it. Some people feel this way when I had somebody say that they were an evangelist, and that started setting off alarm bells for all the people that had something against ultra right-wing Christian evangelists. But that wasn't the point the person was making. They were using the word to describe the fact that they were happy about helping people to make money being self-employed, and that they were evangelists for that type of business and industry. So again, the word didn't have a charge, but it's always the person listening to it. And it's the same thing with our lessons and our experiences. If we become hung up on it and run it over and over and over again, the subconscious mind doesn't know that it's a tape being replayed. It just means that you had another negative experience, so it's going to keep going in that loop. So you have to stop in what he's suggesting here and focus on each decision, weigh the decision, come to a judgment. accept that it is what it is and move forward. And that's like, planting the seed and leaving it in the ground so that we don't disturb it and ruin the natural growth process, because it's only the things that you want and then let go I've ever managed to find and attract into my life. So I hope that's of some assistance, and it might stimulate either one of you to check out some of Dr. Robert Anthony's stuff. I'll post a link. He's still online and he's still blogging. He has some free stuff on his website, all sort of teasers into his self-improvement programs. I'm just going to wrap up what he finished with here in the book. The habits make you the person you are. It is impossible to make major changes in your life without destroying the compulsive hold your habits have upon you. Unless you are happy, healthy, calm, peaceful, self-reliant, and successful in every area of your life, changing self-defeating habits must take a priority in your life. Most of us have no idea how much of our life are built around so-called bad habits. We have programmed the wrong responses in our own subconscious mind and the central nervous system, so brain and mind working together. This causes us to respond in the way we have conditioned ourselves to feel and act. No matter how negative, false, distorted, or destructive this might be. Consequently, we must go through the period of unlearning or deprogramming in order to decondition ourselves. So he says that that's that critical appraisal when you sit down to weigh the decision. If it doesn't resonate with you, make a different decision. Don't just keep doing what you knew worked or what you thought worked or what you think other people, but to really dig into it. Is this best for you? Is it going to hurt other people? Because we know that long term, if you're making money and manipulating other people, you'll be exposed and have it all taken away. I've seen it happen. It is one of the holdbacks I had for a while, about making and keeping a lot of money. I felt that people that had lots of money were evil or bad, or they've gotten it by manipulating or taking advantage of other people. What I've come to realize is it wasn't that they were good, bad, or indifferent. It's they clearly held in their mind what they wanted, and they were compensated for having done that work, whatever it was. And as long as I had resentment for what they had, I couldn't have it for myself. So I'm consciously going through the process of working on what I feel. I actually take the time now when other people get recognized to go and say something positive about it. And actually to take the time and thought to really state something, maybe even come back the next day if I'm not ready to, because I believe that in doing these things and being positively supportive of what other people have, I'll get more of that good stuff in my life, or at least that's the lessons I've learned recently from what I've studied with. The training I did over the weekend was solely focused on planning your dream day and dream week so you could bring it into your life. And it was actually quite an exercise for me and took hours because it had been a long time since somebody had asked that sort of question or I'd done that sort of work. And I knew I needed to do it again because for about a year and a half I was just going from learning to teacher to study to project to get this done to get that done. And I'd really lost track of where I was going and what I personally wanted from the endeavor. And as soon as I stated it 2 weeks ago, exactly what I wanted to bring into my life, things started to change. The next day got my schedule freed up. Since then, I've gone to 2 outside community group events where I've met some new people. One of them's already followed up with me just after a first meeting. But none of these things would have been possible if I hadn't first changed my thoughts, and then after changing my thoughts, changed my actions to coincide with the new thought patterns. So does anybody else have something to add or some example of how this has worked, good or bad, in their life? Because I can cite you some examples of how I've shot myself in the foot by using this against myself, too.
Oh, to me, it reminds me of when people say, well, that's just the way I'm programmed, or it's fate. Well, no. Those habits to become ingrained so that you react in a certain way, and what it takes is for you to realize how you're reacting and plan a different response, and then practice that. And as you say, sometimes you have to go away for a day before you answer. But people aren't programmed to be cynical because somebody else is successful, or begrudge somebody else their successes, like that sort of thing. But yeah, it's sort of interesting how many people use it as a crutch.
Look, and I had this experience yesterday. I was out at the air base delivering the totem times, and there's this nice little old lady I've been talking to for 5 minutes once every 2 weeks for over a year and a half. And I mentioned, that I'd started this new training program and how I was going to be on the call and have a chance to speak in front of the group. And she says, well, that's all good and fine, but are you paying money for this? I said, well, of course, doesn't everybody pay for coaching? And she says, are you making more than you spend? I said, most months. And she says, well, you have to be really careful about all these things. Most of them are a scam, and they're just out there with their hand trying to take your money and have nothing to offer. And I thought, wow, how hard that must be to live with that much resentment about people that charge you to teach you stuff. I understand that she works in the military and all her training's paid for by the government, but she wouldn't have the position and the job she was unless she'd received some training over her 30-plus years in the military. She runs the office on base that has the library and is the distribution hub for everything that is in the military on the air base. But wow, I stopped. I thought about her comment, and I did some things in the boxes, and I finished that, and I came back and I said to her, now, I have a question for you. Do you have something against paid training, or do you just have something against the potential of people making money online? And she said, I never really put much thought to it, but I know you've talked about this a couple of times, and maybe I should actually, check it out. Had I not taken the time to think about what she said and come back and ask her a question, I think that the same, I say something positive, she says something negative thing would just carry on every 2 weeks when I see her. I will be interested to see in 13 days whether she has put some thought to the thing and has some questions for me, because I know that she suffers from diabetes, I know that she's overweight, I know that she's off sick at least once a month on Tuesday when I show up there. It's happened 3 or 4 times in the year, and I'm only there every 2 weeks. So I know that she's got some health challenges that prevent her from enjoying every day off. Maybe finally I've cracked the wall, and because she's such a popular person, it could be my in on the air base. Because it only takes one person saying nice things about you that's trusted and respected, and it changes everybody's perspective of you.
Well, I think too what she's saying is you don't have the intelligence, the smart, whatever you want to call it, to look at a situation and make your own judgment. I mean, yes, there's scammers out there, but presumably you have some basis for choosing who you're going to spend money with. And once again, it's based on how you've educated yourself. So it should not be any of her concern if her conception of online coaches is scammer money grubber. That's her opinion, and she should give you credit for deciding that, having done your research, these particular people are worth spending money on and will bring you greater results as time goes by.
And it was that sort of communication that provided this breakthrough. Because in the questioning back and forth when I went back to her, I used the analogy or the description of what had happened when I signed up, and that our coach had turned it back around on me and said that I should sign up under you instead of her, and that had in some way restored my faith in these sort of people, because if the person was all about the money and the profit, they never would have cut in one of their own trainees into the PayPal or pay program. And it was when I'd said that she sort of relaxed and stepped back and started to look at what I was doing and what I was saying. So it's exactly that. Until you hear something good about it, there's probably no thought in your mind that it could be a good thing. But it only takes one person firmly stating they had a positive experience for you maybe to start thinking that there could be something wrong with your thought process. And I know personally it's all about thought processes because I was where this woman was a year ago. I swore that I was never going to pay for any more training and on and on and on and on. And, you know, 3 months later, I signed up with another training program and I learned a ton of stuff, mostly that I was in my own way and I should stop talking about negative shit. But it served me really, really well, it turns out, because as long as you're dwelling on the negative, you will draw more of that stuff into your life. It's just a simple truth. You get what you focus on. And I think really that's what Dr. Robin Anthony's talking on in his work. We have to consciously stop ourselves and shift the focus anytime we're dwelling on anything that doesn't serve us getting where we've stated we need to go. But the biggest part of that is clearly stating where we need and want to go, because without a firm outcome, you can't go anywhere. It's like planning a trip. If you want to go to Vancouver and you don't know where to find the ferry terminal, it's going to be an awful slow trip to Vancouver, isn't it?
Which brings me around to, I saw you yesterday on Susan Shear Young's call. What did you think of her?
Yeah.
Did you think she had some good things to say?
I thought it was a great call. And if it hadn't been for the FFM call at noon, I would have stayed around to chat afterwards, and I'm actually planning to go and check out her book. I think I've heard her speak once before at a company-sponsored thing. I'm not sure, it was years ago, but it was exactly what I needed to hear. I'm so glad that I literally got in the house 5 minutes before that class started, because I had been at the airbase delivering these newspapers. I came in, sat down, heard what I needed to hear, went on the call, next call after that, got the feedback I thought I was going to get on the work I'd done, and it just all moved forward. It was a great, hugely productive day. It comes back to if the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And each one of these people that I'm now meeting has something that I can use. And as I embrace it, my ability to use it expands, as well as the frequency of these people showing up around me. The more I accept it, the more of it happens. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
And it's so cool.
Well, I think too, even with your example of the woman at the base, you know, she's gotten so used to being able to see the negative that at this point in time, she cannot recognize positive. So it was only by you stopping and sort of saying, wait a minute, here's an example of the positive, that she went, oh, okay, so maybe it does exist if you open your mind to it.
And therein lies the epiphany for some people. I know that I was an employee for 20 years and I just knew there was something different. It took me, I don't know, probably 5 different things in 2 years to find something that I could make a dime at, and I ran with that for 6 years. I actually stayed longer than I should have, because staying in the financial business through the economic crash of 2008 and 2009 was completely frustrating and a waste of all my time, because nobody in early 2009 wanted to put any money into the lottery system. And if you're earning money on commission, it's not good to be selling U.S. bank stocks during the big market crash. Although if people had bought, and 2 people did, they doubled their money in less than 2 years. So it proves that going against the herd mentality is where the money is. Because everybody that took their money out guaranteed their losses in stone, because they took their money out and made the loss. The people that left their money in, at least personally, I noticed that my funds have all come back, and last year I made 17% in the calendar year. And mind you, it's the best year in the last 5 years, but I made 17% on my investment last year in a secure Canadian investment product. It's a bank supported by Canadian Bank of Canada funds in bonds. So, wow, who knew? But it was the right place, and I'm so glad I made that investment 13 years ago, because most people last year saw a 7 or 8% return, or barely any, depending on what their risk factor was. It's good and bad, and I think it's what you expect and accept. And I'm happy with having more money and having my money grow. So maybe that's why my investment return was that way this year and not the previous year, because I've changed my desire and my ability to attract positive. How are you doing with your real estate show? Did these people finally stop harassing you and go away, or did they actually come back and make a reasonable offer on
Oh, me?
Yes.
Mine? I managed to convince the guy that I didn't have to justify anything to him and to get out of my life. In
Well,
so many words.
at least you didn't have to take your house off the market. Um, I worked for the guy that had the Edgewater Marine in the early 2000s. His daughter and I knew each other. I knew her husband even better. In 2003, she went out to Kimberley to look at the Kimberley Hotel because there's a ski resort out there, and there's this really famous square in Kimberley where they do the Oktoberfest all October, and it's all German and all this stuff. She was looking to buy the place. 2 weeks later, her dad came out to inspect the building. He treated the owner of the building improperly so poorly and insulted the guy in his business prowess and his skill and his knowledge and how the place had become run down. The guy actually not only refused to sell it to him, he actually took it off the market.
Well, mine's private anyways, so I just tell them to take their bags and hike.
Other than that, have you had any other interested people, any inquiries? Or
I've had a couple online, but that's about it. So it's okay. It'll happen when it happens. And you know, I've just listed with another private group who are advertising the heck out of it. So we'll see. And they made big glossy ads and everything. So we'll see what happens.
Nice.
Yeah, as I say, I got other things, other fish to fry right at the moment. So.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, anything new and exciting in your life, Chris?
No, no.
She's
Same
just
old.
worried about her puppy dog.
Yeah.
They can be a concern.
Well, they're family, you know?
Right. I've covered what I'd like to cover today. If you ladies don't have anything else, I will call this a wrap for the session. We've got 41 minutes on the clock, or 43 minutes on the clock. I know Agnes has a couple of things that she needs to take care of before she sits down and has her dinner tonight.
Yeah, more than a few.
No, I don't have anything.
Yeah, and I'm done.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you for introducing us to that book.
No problem at all.
Yeah, that was
Gotta
great.
share what works. Have a great week, ladies, and I will keep in touch, and we will see you all in a week.
All
Okay,
right.
sounds good. See you later, Chris.
Bye, Agnes.
Bye.
Take care.